This story starts with a girl is standing in front of a beautiful manor. Butler said, "Your Grace, your fiancé, Lady Karina, is here to see you." Milian stops writing and asked, "What?" "He is ruler of Xantar, Duke Milian Pastellio." He asked, "Fong, isn't the wedding a year from now?" While bowing his head, Fong replied, "Yes, your Grace." He said, "But since she's come all this way, I think you should at least go and see her." Milian stands up and started walking. He said, "Why?" in angry tone. "How could she be this rude? What in the world is she thinking?" He said, "Though we're engaged, I can't believe that she would barge in here without even informing us ahead of time." While Fong is walking beside him, he said, "And she just had to come now, when winter is around the corner, and I have more important matters to deal with." Milian thinks in his mind, "We must accumulate enough food to last and make preparations to fight against demonic monsters. Please don't forget to subscribe and help me to reach 1K subs as soon as possible. Thanks for your support." Milian stops at a door and asked while opening the door, "Is it too late to call off the engagement now?" Karina said, "That sounds wonderful." Milian looks at her and thinks in his mind, "TSK, did she overhear?" He said, "What did you just say?" Karina said, "I'm willing to call off the engagement. In return, I'd like to live here for a period of about 6 to 10 months. Milian asked, "Who?" Karina replied, "Me." Milian asked, "Are you out of your mind?" Karina replied, "Not at all." She said, "I don't need a room in the main building. I'm fine with staying in the annex, as well." She digs up a paper from her robe and said, "I even brought the document to break off the engagement." While presenting the paper to Milian, she said, "Here you go." Milian looks at her, and then looks at her clothes. She's wearing worn out and shabby clothes. He asked, "Is your family struggling financially?" Karina tilts her head and while confused asked, "Pardon?" While looking at her clothes, Milian asked, "Did you travel like that? Where are the rest of your bags?" Karina said, I didn't bring anything else, in case something happened to me." He asked, "How did you come all this way?" She said while remembering her journey in her mind, I paid for a carriage ride, got off and walked for a while, then hitchhiked the rest of the way." Milian asked, "When did you depart?" Karina replied, 2 months ago. Milian takes a sigh and said, "You could have sent a message during that time. No, more importantly, how could you embark on a dangerous journey all by yourself? How naive can you be?" Karina replied, "That's because..." While smiling, she said, "This may be my first trip as well as my last." While remembering the scenery of her journey of forest and wildlife, she said, "I've always wanted to accomplish something with my own strength." Milian thinks in his mind, well, it wouldn't make sense for a noble lady to go on such a reckless journey more than once. Karina asked, "May I please stay here?" Milian walks close to her and asked, "What will you do if I say no?" Karina thinks and said, "Well, I did think of going from place to place and working here, and there is my plan B." Milian takes a sigh and thinks in his mind, what kind of a plan is that? He looks at her and thinks, is she really the same person I saw at the engagement ceremony? He recalls his memories of his engagement with Karina in his mind. He thinks in his mind, I had no idea that she was this rash. Karina said while smiling, "But I believe you won't say no, yes?" He asked, "What makes you think that?" She replied, "That's because Your Grace doesn't like me." While showing him the paper, she said, "I'm quite good at catching on to stuff like that. As you can see, I've already filled out the form to call off our engagement." He said, "Very well. Come in for now." She said, "Thank you. I promise not to be a bother. You won't even know that I'm here." She said, "And when I suddenly disappear one day, just think that I've returned home." While closing her eyes, she said, "Or you can think that you've been freed from an annoying burden." Milian said, "As you wish. Fong, prepare a room for her." Karina tells in her mind, "And that was how I ended up living in the manor of my fiancé who hated me." Before some time, Karina and her family was sitting at the dining table. Karina's father said, "Lia, you look very well today." Abilia said, "It's all thanks to the wonderful medicine that you and mother bring me every day." Felden said, how could you call that wonderful? It looked awfully bitter. Yuck. Karina's mother said with closed eyes. Leah's ill. She needs to eat her medicine to get well, even if it's bitter. Enfric said, I also bought you a gift to cheer you up, Leah. Felden asked, no fair. What about me? Enfric said, of course, I brought you one too. Abelia said, thank you, Enfric. Karina tells his story of her childhood. She tells, when I was little, I wondered why I was the only one with dull, brown hair in my family. While looking at her family photos, she tells, we all share the same blood, but I don't look like them at all. While putting her spoon back on table, she tells, later on, I found out that I had inherited my dark hair from one of my grandparents. She stands up and said, I'm finished. May I be excused? Karina's mother said, all right. Karina walks away and closed the door to the dining hall. She said, while walking, they don't even care. While walking, she thinks in her mind, it's all right. It doesn't bother me anymore. She staggers while walking. She grabs the side of a pillar and stands. She then started running. She stops and vomited up everything she ate. She thinks in her mind, he didn't say, my condition would deteriorate this quickly. A few days ago, while writing on the paper, doctor said, I'm sorry to say this, but your organs seem to be functioning at only half of their potential. Karina asked, is it that serious? Doctor replied, yes. It's a miracle you're still walking about. If you suddenly became like this, though you were healthy before, I suspect that it could be the art disease. Karina gets shocked after hearing that. She asked, the art disease? Doctor explained, oh Karina, among artists, there are a few gifted individuals who can bring about miracles. And among these individuals, there are some whose abilities cost them their life force. That being the case, I assume you can create miracles as well. Karina said with a sad face. Yes. Doctor said, every time you use your power, your health must have weakened considerably. Why didn't you get a checkup? If you discovered that you had this illness beforehand, it wouldn't have worsened to this extent. The doctor asked, didn't your family say anything? Karina shakes her head. Karina talks in her mind, the reason why I didn't tell my family about this is because they wouldn't have listened. While remembering her miracle art, she tells, I guess you could say it was out of pride. While imagining her parents in her mind, she tells, of course, it wasn't that my parents didn't love me. They always tried to be fair. But my younger siblings needed my parents more than I did because they were younger and ill. Inevitably, mother and father couldn't afford to be fair all the time. She tells, I was neither the firstborn nor the youngest in the family. I was the second child who could look after myself. Naturally, the amount of attention my parents gave me was smaller than a grain of sand. She started shaking while thinking, if I tell them now, they'll probably start paying more attention to me. But how will I know whether they truly care for me? What if they're just interested in my ability? Back to present. The doctor asked, you said you're vomiting blood and feeling anemic? Karina replied, yes. Doctor said, that's serious. I'm sorry to say this. With a serious face, doctor said, but you have a year to live, at most. He said, since you won't be able to eat properly anymore, your body will become weaker. While Karina is shocked, he said, so even 1 year is a stretch. Karina asked, is there anything I can do to live? Doctor replied, no, not as far as I know. But come back after a while if you still wish to live a little longer. I may come up with something. While sitting near the window, Karina saw birds flying. She thinks in her mind, I wish I had wings too. She said, I'm going to die. She squeezes her hand and thinks, but before that happens, I want to do everything I had ever wanted to do. I'm not going to force myself to smile. I'm not going to act like I can do everything alone. She thinks, and I'm going to start speaking up for myself. While leaning on the window, she thinks in her mind, what will everyone think when they find out about my illness? While imagining her family, she thinks in her mind, if they start treating me like I'm an inconvenience. While taking a sigh, she thinks, I don't think I'll be able to bear it. That's why I can't tell them. She thinks while looking outside the window, should I just run away? But I have only a year left. Even if I do run away, where will I go? What will I do? While standing up, she thinks in her mind, I wish there was someone who would look at me for the way I am, regardless of whether they like me or not. She remembers something in her mind. Karina recalls her engagement day in her mind, in which Milian asked, "Are you a sheep?" He said, "You meekly do everything you're told, going this way and that. If you didn't want to come here, you shouldn't have." Karina looks at him. While walking, she thinks in her mind, but if I think about it, he didn't reject the engagement either. She thinks, then, shall I go to the north? While imagining herself on journey, she thinks it'll be a journey I'll embark on, with my own 2 feet. She thinks in her mind, all right. But what should I bring with me? While writing on a paper, Karina thinks in her mind, I should exchange gold for cash beforehand, make sure to pack comfortable clothes, jerky, water, and she thinks, I need to bring the document to call off the engagement. She started writing. While writing, she thinks in her mind, I should probably drop by to see that doctor again. While sitting in front of mirror, she thinks in her mind, anyway, I didn't go down to eat breakfast, but no one came to find me. While looking sad, she thinks, I do realize they don't know I'm ill, but I still feel a little sad. She shakes her head to shake off the gloomy thoughts and thinks it's all right. I only have a week to get ready, so I need to begin now. While touching her money bag, she thinks I've prepared enough pocket money. While standing in front of the mirror and looking at her, she recalls her memories. Someone walks to Karina and said, "Excuse me." Karina asked, "Yes? What is it?" She asked, "Are you well acquainted with Lord Enfric? I saw you talking to him a few moments ago." Karina replied, "Yes." Karina answering her, Karina thinks in her mind, that's because he's my brother. The girl started talking to the other girl, "Oh, how I envy you. He's quite dashing, isn't he?" The other girl said, "Count and Countess Leopold are both very admirable people, and their children are all famous, aren't they?" While imagining Enfric, she said, "First, Lord Enfric. They say that he's well versed in literary arts, is a skilled swordsman, and that he's more than capable to become the head of House Leopold at any time." She said, "That's right. And I also heard that a young noblewoman confessed her love to him through a letter not long ago." While imagining Felden, she said, "And Lord Felden. They say that he's always surrounded by people because he's full of life. And we mustn't forget Lady Abelia." While imagining Abelia, she said, "She has beautiful, wavy blonde hair flowing down her back, and blue eyes that shine like jewels. I saw her the other day, and you wouldn't believe how lovely she was. It's no wonder she's the most well-known lady in high society. But she's quite ill." After listening to them talking to each other, Karina walks away. The first girl said, "Yes, that's why the Leopolds are so careful about her health. Come to think of it, there was someone else." The other girl said, "Yes, someone quite plain was always with them. I wonder who she is. Could it be? Where did she go?" Karina was remembering all of this while standing in front of a mirror. She puts her hand on her cheeks and said, "Someone plain." While walking in the hallway, she thinks in her mind, I remember turning away and going straight back home that day. I wonder what happened afterward. While walking down the stairs, Karina saw Nocturne. Nocturne also saw Karina. Nocturne said, "Oh, hello, Lady Karina." Karina glares at him for a moment, and she said, "It's been a while, Nocturne. What brings you here?" He cheerfully replied, "Yeah. I mean, Lady Abelia is getting her checkup today." Karina thinks in her mind, "Yeah, While remembering her younger self, Karina thinks in her mind, I once had feelings for him, but... While imagining Nocturne and Abelia, she thinks in her mind Nocturne only had eyes for Abelia. Perhaps it was because she reminded him of his little sister, who died when she was young. I had no choice but to let my affection for him wither away. While passing by Nocturne, Karina said, "I see. I'll be going now." Nocturne looks at Karina, gets an intuition, and said, "You don't look too well. Are you alright?" Karina thinks in her mind, "Since when did you care?" She said, "I guess I didn't get enough sleep." Nocturne hence said, "I could give you a checkup along with Lady Abelia, if you'd like." Karina said that's alright. While both of them were talking while standing at stairs, Abelia came. Abelia walks to Karina and cheerfully hugs her. While hugging, she said, "Karina!" Due to this unexpected hug, Karina stumbles and Nocturne grabs Karina. Karina looks surprised by Nocturne's gesture. While looking at Abelia, Nocturne said, "It's dangerous to run around here, Leah." Abelia said, "Sorry, Nocturne. I was just so happy to see Karina." Karina. Abelia keeps hugging Karina as she asked Karina, "Where are you going?" Karina replied, "I'm going out." Karina grabs Abelia by her shoulders and said, "Abelia, you should be more careful. What if you fell down the stairs?" Abelia said, "I knew you would catch me." After hearing Abelia, Karina mumbles something. No one heard anything. Nocturne and Abelia looks confused. "Huh!" Karina said, "It's nothing. You should go get your checkup done so you'll get better." While putting on a pout, Abelia said, "But Nocturne always scolds me." Abelia said, "Besides, I feel better these days. Can I go outside with you?" Karina pushes her hand away and said, "Nocturne came all the way here to help you. It wouldn't do to just send him back." Abelia looks a little sad and said, "But..." Nocturne said, "Leah, I'm sad that you think I only scold you. I'm just doing my job." He said, "Since Lady Karina has plans, we should let her go and head upstairs now." Abelia said, "Okay." Abelia drooped her shoulders and said, "You're so lucky to be able to go outside every day, Karina." After hearing Abelia, Karina gets shocked. She clenches her hands and thinks in her mind, "What? Lucky? How could you say that? You have no idea what I had to endure." Karina remembers a time. While taking care of Abelia, Karina tells in her mind, "Abelia loved clinging to me. So I always had to stay by her side and tend to her." While remembering the letters, she tells in her mind, "All those tea party invitations gathered dust on my desk because I couldn't go. Naturally." She tells in her mind, "I wished I could attend parties and have fun. I never got a chance to make any friends. That's how it was all the time." While talking to Karina, her mother said, "I'm sorry, Karina. Enfric fell off his horse, so I need to go and see him." Karina said with a sad face, "But today's my birthday." While maids are tending to her dress, Karina's mother said, "Your brother could have been seriously injured." Karina asked, "What about father?" Her mother said, "He's already left for the academy. Tell the butler what you'd like for your birthday." While looking at newborn kids, Karina said, "Wow, they're so tiny. Are they my younger siblings?" While lying on bed, Karina's mother said, "That's right. Since you're a big sister now, you need to take good care of them, alright?" Karina cheerfully said, "Okay." Karina imagines herself with her siblings walking, while she looks happy. Abelia coughs. Karina thinks in her mind, "Did she cough?" Karina said, "Mother, Abelia just..." Her mother said, "Karina, go to your room now." Her mother said to the maid with a worried look in her face, "Call for the doctor immediately." The maid said, "Yes, my lady." While another time, Karina said, "No. Feldon. Give it back." While Feldon is a kid, he grabs the toy. Karina pulls it from him and said, "Mother made me this for my birthday." Feldon falls with a thump sound and started crying. Karina gets startled after looking at Feldon crying. Karina's mother burst open the door and said angrily, "Goodness, Karina. What in the world are you doing? How could you treat your younger brother like that?" Karina said, "But Feldon tried to take my..." Her mother interrupts Karina and shouted, "He's just a baby. Give it to him." While holding Feldon, her mother said, "You must be kind to the little ones so they'll follow in your footsteps. Just let Feldon play with that. My darling boy, are you alright?" While Karina is hugging the toy, her mother said, "Be a good girl, Karina." She said, "Karina, do as you're told. Do you want to be punished by your father?" Karina said. No, but… Her mother said, then stop acting like a child. Karina gives her toy to Feldon. At another time, Karina said to her mother, Mother, I feel dizzy. While sewing, her mother said, What? She puts her hand on Karina's forehead and said, Oh my, you have a fever. She said Abelia has a fever as well. The doctor is with her now, so I'll send him over to you afterward. She holds Karina up and said, Let's go to your room for now. I'll carry you there. Karina said, Okay. Karina looks happy and she smiles looking at her mother. Someone knocks on the door. The butler said to Karina's mother, My lady, the doctor wishes to talk to you about Lady Abelia. Her mother asked, Is something wrong? All right. Tell him I'll be right there. She drops Karina and said to her, I'm sorry, Karina. I'll call a maid for you. Go to your room and get some rest. I'll be there as soon as I'm done. She said, Since you're a big girl now, you'll be able to look after yourself, yes? Karina asked. Can't you carry me to my room, mother? Her mother said, Ha. But you're healthy. She remembers other times where her mother said, You must be understanding of your sister since she's ill. You're such a good girl, Karina. She tells I had to be a good child if I wanted to receive praise from my parents. While looking at sick Abelia, she tells Abelia was sicker than I was. While imagining Feldon, she tells Feldon was younger than I was. While looking at the picture, she tells an Enfric lived far away from home. She tells my parents always seemed to have an excuse for not prioritizing me. That was how I slowly closed my heart and decided not to reach out to them when I turned 10. While drawing, she tells instead, I found a new hobby. Her eyes sparkles yellow when she is drawing. She tells I didn't know my creations were miracles then. While looking at a butterfly drawing, she tells, but I felt fulfilled whenever I filled the paper with my drawings. The butterfly from her drawing becomes alive and started flying. Karina looks at butterfly with awe. She joyfully runs to her parents and said, Mother, Father! Look at this picture I drew! Her mother said to Karina while holding the paper, Karina! Enfric won first place at the Academy Swordsmanship competition. We suspect that he'll graduate early. Karina said, Wow, that's fantastic. Her mother joyfully said, That's right. I wonder who he takes after. While Karina's father said, I want to see it too. While showing her drawing, Karina said, Mother, I drew this picture today. Her mother takes a glance at her drawing and turns her head away and said, Yes, good job. Her mother said to her father, Anyway, we must throw a small party when he comes home for the weekend. While Karina is standing behind them looking sad, she said, Abelia is getting better these days, too. So many good things are happening. Karina thinks in her mind, Won't you look my way, just once? At another time, Karina's mother said, Karina! While sitting on a chair drawing, Karina said, Yes? Her mother shouted, Did you take what was on my desk? Karina replied, No. Her mother said, Don't lie. She said, Then why is it in Abelia's hands? I told you it's dangerous. With a blank expression, Karina said, I didn't do. While Abelia is crying besides her mother, she said, Why can't you be a good big sister? Why must you cause so much trouble? Karina thinks in her mind she doesn't want to listen to me. She said, I'm sorry. I won't do it again. At another time, Karina's father said to her, Enfric's graduation ceremony is tomorrow, so would it be alright if we push back your birthday party, Karina? Karina thinks in her mind, compared to Enfric's many talents, which everyone praises, my drawings are nothing. It's not like having my party a bit later is going to mean there'll be less food or presents. At another time, while holding Abelia, Karina's mother said to her, Karina, it's all right to have your tea party another day, yes? Abelia's not well again. Karina think in her mind, of course, since I'm healthier than her. It's okay. She said, Yes, that's fine. I'm perfectly fine. She tells, the more I said those words, the more I drew. That's when I realized that my pictures only came to life if I drew sincerely with all my heart. Sometimes I drew for just an hour. At other times, I drew for an entire day. Countless pictures came to life and vanished. While remembering herself crying, she tells I loved my creations more than my family, who wouldn't look at me no matter how much I cried for them. She tells while remembering her creations at times, they were animals that consoled me when I was upset, or just friends that listened to what I had to say. And that was how I soon reached the point of no return. While walking away, Karina said then, I'll see you later. She thinks in her mind, I feel like I'm going to throw up. Abilia shouted while standing on stairs, Karina. She said, buy me something yummy from the market. I want to try stuff like kebabs, too. Nocturne said to Abilia. Yeah, be careful. Karina said while looking happy. Alright. Abilia said, hurry back, Karina. While walking in the garden, Karina thinks in her mind. Karina Leopold. She thinks you're the worst. How could you get jealous of your own little sister? The doctor asked Karina, did you decide that you want to live? While smiling, Karina said, no, I need medicine. Doctor asked, medicine? What kind of medicine? She said, I'm going to leave this place. I've never been in control of my own life, not even once. She said, I don't want to live like this anymore. The doctor asked him, so, where are you going? She replied, it's a place at the end of the northern region. She said, have you heard of Zentar? While cheerfully smiling, doctor said, you might as well dig your own grave now. He said you'd be better off taking a pill that'll kill you in a snap of a finger than going to a place like that. While walking away from her, he said, if you're here to ask to be killed, you're at the wrong place. Get out of here. Karina said, no, you misunderstand. She said, is there a way to get there safely without dying? I was planning to take 2 months to get there. While the doctor is thinking, she said, and rest for a day or two every week at an inn. Would it be impossible? While pulling his chair, doctor asked, but why go north? She said, I have an acquaintance there. He said, but the north is unbelievably freezing. On top of that, winter's only 2 months away. She said, I don't think that'll be a problem, since I plan on only staying indoors. With a worried look, doctor asked, what are you trying to do, exactly? While looking at him, Karina thinks in her mind, he's looking at me as if I'm an ignorant child. She said, I would like to get there without dying. That's all I want. The doctor asked, when do you plan on leaving? She said, next week. While writing something, doctor said, there's not much time left. If you have heart disease, there's not a lot I can do about your declining health. He said, but I can delay the process. If you stop taking the pills, your condition will get a lot worse. And I'll only prescribe you 2 months' worth of them. After hearing the doctor, Karina cheered up and said, that's more than enough. Karina gives money to the doctor. He said, that's too much money. This medicine isn't even that expensive. Karina said, you're prescribing me 2 months' worth of medicine. And I also wanted to give this to you as a sign of thanks. I don't have anywhere to spend this, anyway. I'll see you in 6 days, sir. While looking at her leaving, doctor thinks in his mind, she's so young, and yet she's so quick to give up. I wonder what kind of life she lived to look so relieved about leaving. While walking in the bazaar, Karina thinks in her mind, once I get the medicine, I'll be all set to go. While walking in bazaar, she smells the aroma of kebabs. She thinks in her mind, that smells heavenly. The stall owner said to Karina, don't be shy and give it a try, miss. You'll thank me later. Karina remembers Abilia in her mind saying, I want to try stuff like kebabs, too. While smiling, Karina said to the stall owner, I'll have 2 to go, please. While sitting in the carriage, Karina looks outside. She looks at a girl wiping a little girl's face with an handkerchief. She remembers Abilia's words in her mind. You're so lucky to be able to go outside every day, Karina. While looking sad, she thinks in her mind, I know she didn't mean it in a bad way, and I know that she adores me as well, though I don't know why. While her heart throbs, she thinks in her mind, I wish I could be more easygoing about things like this. While coming from the gate and walking, she thinks in her mid, after all, Abelia and Felden are younger than me, and I should be understanding as their older sister. She said I guessed this would be perfect for a light snack before dinner. Felden asked Karina, "Where have you been?" Karina replied, "Hello, Felden." While sniffing the bag Karina is holding, Felden said, "Smells delicious." He snatches the bag from Karina and said while smiling, "Isn't this too heavy, Karina? I'll carry it for you." Karina said, "You only offer to help when I have food." While smiling she said, "Go and eat it with Abelia. She told me to buy her some." While running away Felsen said, "Yahoo, thanks, Karina." "Hey, Abelia! Look what I've got!" Karina thinks in her mind, "I'm drained. I should take a quick nap." At night Karina was sleeping in her bedroom. She heard a voice saying, "Karina Leopold!" She rises up from bed and asked, "What brings you to my room at this hour?" "Father," her father angrily said. "Karina, did you buy street food for Abelia?" Karina replied, "Yes. I went out today." While her mother and Felden are standing behind her father, he said, "Ha, you know that Abelia should be careful about what she eats, don't you?" While looking down, Karina thinks in her mind, "So this is what brought them to my room. I simply got her what she wanted." Karina asked, "Did something happen to Abelia?" Her father said, "There must have been something wrong with the food. She threw up everything to the point of dehydration." While remembering Abelia vomiting up, he said, "How could you be so thoughtless? You're her older sister." Her mother said, "Your father's right, Karina. You're an adult now. You should have been more careful." Karina said, "But Lia." Her father interrupts her and shouted, "I don't want to hear your excuses." Felden said, "Father, mother." Karina just. Karina talks to herself in her mind, "Keep calm. This will end as it always has if you say sorry. They're simply worried about Abelia. There's no one else to blame." But she thinks in her mind, "Why are they taking it all out on me?" Karina said to her father, "So what?" Her father gets stunned. "Huh?" He asked, "What did you just say?" Karina said, "What do you want me to do?" She thinks in her mind, "How much longer do I have to endure this? For a year?" While she clenches her clothes, she thinks in her mind, "Until the day I die. Will they know how I felt after my death?" Her father said, "What an insolent." Karina interrupts him and said, "I simply bought those kebabs for Abelia because she asked me to." She said, "And you should have firmly told her that she shouldn't eat such foods because they may be bad for her health." Her father said, "What? How ignorant are you about your sisters?" Karina interrupts her father again and said, "No. I thought that it'd be alright because Abelia asked me to buy her some." While getting shocked, her mother said, "Karina, how could you talk back to your father like that?" She thinks in her mind, "Ha, my head hurts." She said, "What do you mean? I simply told him my opinion, that's all. I don't believe I did anything wrong." Her mother said, "Ha, but if you were going to buy her food like that, you should have gotten permission from the doctor." Karina said, "What do you mean by food like that? Felden was fine after he ate it." She said, "Besides, I bought some after trying one myself, so I thought it'd be alright." She said to her father, "I'll be careful from now on, father. And please warn Abelia about this as well." While trying to get calm, her father said, "Alright. Please be more cautious." While her father, turning Felden, asked her mother, "Mother, may I go see Abelia?" She replied, "Go on." Her father stopped at the door and said, "Karina, you know that your sister has been unwell since the day she was born, don't you?" Karina said, "Yes." He said, "You might feel like this isn't fair, but you're perfectly healthy. So please understand." Karina said, "All right." She thinks in her mind, "I'm sick of hearing about how healthy I am. It's not like I'm the only healthy one in this family. Frick and Felden are perfectly fine as well. Why does he always talk as if being born healthy is a sin, and keeps demanding me to make sacrifices?" Karina said, "I know." Karina's mother said, "Your father must be worked up because Lia passed out. Karina, please be understanding." She asked Karina. You're not upset or anything, are you? While they were going, Karina said, Is that all you have to say to me? Both of her parents stopped. Her father asked, What? Karina asked mockingly. I'm surprised you even knew where my room was, father. Mother, he replied. Of course we knew. Karina said, I thought that both of you had forgotten, since you never came here to see me these past few years. After listening to Karina, both of them get shocked. Karina said to them, Please tell Abilia that I'm sorry I caused such an inconvenience. I'm tired, so I'd like to get some rest. They left after that. While lying on her bed, Karina thinks in her mind, Ha! I didn't do anything wrong. I hope Abilia's alright. While looking worried, she thinks in her mind, as for dehydration, I've been through it a couple times recently myself. It'll be alright. It's not a big deal. After that, Karina quickly stands up and take her colors and started drawing. She draws a little fairy, and she came to life. The little fairy starts lying. Karina said, Hello there, Miss Fairy. While the little fairy hugs her, she thinks in her mind, I should just forget it all, like I always did. I have my drawings. She thinks creating art is the only way I can breathe. I cannot stop drawing, even if I have to exchange my life for it. After all, it's my everything. The next day, maid asked Karina, Oh my! Are you here to eat in the dining room today, Lady Karina? Karina remembers Felden and Abilia apologizing to her. Felden said, Karina, sorry about the other day. While crying, Abilia said, Karina, I'm sorry. I won't ask you to buy me street food ever again, so will you forgive me? And please come to the dining room for our meals, too. While standing in front of the door, Karina said, Yes, I will. The maid said, That's good to hear. Everyone will be pleased. Karina talks in her mind, Today will be my last day here, anyway. While sitting on the dining table, Karina thinks in her mind, I don't think I'll be able to eat anything other than that salad. Her father said to her, Ahem. Karina, I noticed that your birthday is in 2 days. She said, Yes, that's right. She thinks in her mind, I forgot that my birthday was coming up. Her father said that happens to be Enfric's day off, so we thought it'd be nice to go on a picnic all together. He said, Would it be alright to push back your birthday party? Karina said, Do as you wish. However, I don't think I'll be able to attend the picnic. I have plans. Her father asked, Is it so important that you must miss a family event? While standing up from the dining table, she said, Yes, I'm sorry. I hope you all have a lovely time without me. I'm done eating, so I'll excuse myself first. After that, she dashed back to her room. She places a paper on the table. While standing in front of the mirror, she thinks in her mind, I thought I couldn't be any more disappointed or sad. While writing on the paper, she thinks this might as well be my last birthday. She thinks father didn't even seem sorry when he asked if my party could be postponed. He acted like I would obviously say yes. It looks like my last memory of this place is going to be horrid too. After putting her robe, she gets ready to leave. She thinks in her mind still, since they're family, I wondered whether I should at least say something to them before leaving. But I just ended up leaving a simple letter on my table. After that, she left on her journey. In the Zenta region. While taking bath, Karina thinks in her mind, it's a relief that he didn't kick me out. A few minutes ago, Milian said while going away, As you wish. Fong, prepare a room for her. He said to her, We'll talk after you get washed up. Karina nodded to him. While looking at the medicine bottle, she thinks, I only have 3 pills left. She closes her eyes and remembers the doctor's words in her mind, I've given you plenty of medicine, but if you end up with only 3 pills left, stop taking them. Once you do, you'll come down with a fever in 3 days. Your health will decline rapidly afterward. It'll be as if all the water pent up behind a dam comes bursting out. After the bath, while rinsing her hair, Karina thinks in her mind, if my calculations are correct, my body temperature will start rising tonight. She remembers the doctor's words again: if your fever rises to an unbearable level, take a pill once every 2 days. P.S. Don't resist sleep. It's a sign that your body is fighting to stay alive. While standing, she thinks in her mind, is this what it's like to be a grandfather? While remembering her journey, she thinks the journey was exhausting, but it was tremendously fun as well. Though I only have 1 year to live as I wish. After getting ready, she thinks, no, that's more than enough for me. I should do whatever I want. And in order to do that, she remembers something in her mind. While standing in front of Milian, she thinks in her mind, this study smells like paper and ink. I think I kind of understand why he seems so touchy now. While looking away from him, she thinks in her mind, I'm sorry to bother you when you're busy. Milian said, take a seat first. Karina said, all right. Both Milian and Karina sat on sofas and the butler pours them tea. Milian said, now, explain why you came all the way to Zentar. Karina asked him, must I? Milian said with a frustrated look, I think I have the right to know, seeing how you're the one who asked me to let you live here for a while. He asked, did you get into a fight with your family or something? Karina clenches her clothes and said, I suppose you can say that. Milian said, considering the fact that you spent 2 whole months just to get here, I understand how desperately you wanted to leave. While Karina is looking down and sad, he asked, was the fight that serious? Karina talks in her mind, he is partly right. While imagining her family in her mind, I just wanted to spend my last days in peace, and, in order to do that, I needed to be far away from my family. She thinks in her mind, to be honest, a part of me wished that they would regret how they treated me after I died. I know I'm being childish, but... While holding the teacup, she said, everyone needs time to be alone sometimes. Milian said, yes, but now's not a good time. Winter's the busiest season of the year in Zentar, so I won't be able to tend to your needs. Karina joyfully said, that sounds great. While looking gloomy, Milian thinks in his mind, what in the world is this tiny lady trying to say? No, more importantly. Karina started babbling. She said, so if you happen to have an annex that you're not using, may I use it? If I were given a room right next to your graces, I imagine that it'd be awfully awkward when we run into each other, and... While looking at her babble, Milian thinks in his mind, is this really the same lady that I met at the engagement ceremony? She seems rather different now. He said ahem, the annex needs a bit of touching up. Karina asked, is it dusty? Milian said, no, it's clean, but it needs to be refurbished, and I have yet to assign servants there. While putting her cup and table, she said, if there's fire and warm water, it's more than enough. I don't even need a maid. Milian said, if you say so. It's ready for use, so you may move in whenever you'd like. Fang, make preparations. He said, and don't even think about going outside by yourself. With a concerning look on his face, he said, the north is different from the south during the winter. It's dangerous because you never know when a demonic monster could appear. Karina stands up and said, don't worry. I don't plan on venturing out. I'd like to get some rest. May I go to the annex right away? Milian said, go ahead. While going away, Karina said to Milian, thank you for allowing me to stay here. Milian said, I didn't exactly have a choice. It's not like I could kick you out. While walking, Karina stops at the door. While opening the door, she said, Your Grace, I'm sorry to be an inconvenience. She left while Milian and Fang are still there. While walking, Karina collapsed at the side of a wall. She thinks, I feel a bit dizzy. Karina was sleeping on the bed. While lying on bed, she thinks in her mind, it's so cold. While looking at the light, she thinks the light's still on over there. She rises up from bed. While walking holding a lantern, she thinks in her mind, I should fetch a kettle and a towel to cool my forehead while I have enough strength to move. While walking, she thinks, is the kitchen this way? This place is bigger than Leopold Manor, so it's hard to find my way around. While walking, she hears a creepy sound and gets spooked. She then heard voice of someone walking, and then she heard a voice saying, Lady Karina? She gets scared. She screamed and swings the lantern to the person calling her. The person avoids her swing. She then glances at the person. Milian asked, "What are you doing up so late?" While taking a sigh of relief, she said, "Well, what brings your grace here at this hour?" Milian said, "Ah." While scratching his neck, he thinks in his mind, "I can't tell her that I came because I was worried about her." He said, "I was taking a walk when I remembered the heaters in the annex were broken, so I came to check on them." Karina said, "Oh? Is that so?" He steps up to her and extends his hand towards her, and she flinches. He said, "But..." While getting confused, he asked, "Lady Karina, are you hiding something from me?" While looking at her worried face, he said, "If anything is wrong, tell me." Karina said, "It's nothing." With an angry face, he thinks in his mind, "Nothing?" He then grabs her hand and started walking. While walking, he thinks in his mind, while looking at her, she's out of breath, her cheeks are red, and unlike before, her voice is shaking. He said to her, "You have a fever?" Karina said, "It's all right. I'm sure it'll go away if I get enough rest." He said, "I should have seen this coming when you told me that it took you 2 months to get here. Why didn't you just say you were feeling unwell? Only a foolish bear would try to endure something like this." Karina imagines a bear in her mind and asked, "A bear?" He said, "On the battlefield, it's more troublesome to deal with someone who dies from hiding their wounds. So, if you don't want your condition to worsen even more, I need you to tell me about these things beforehand." He asked, "Do you understand?" With a sorry face, she said, "I'm sorry." She thinks in her mind, "Wait a minute. Why do I have to be scolded here like this in the middle of the night?" Karina said, "I..." Milian interrupts her, and he raised his hand in front of Karina's face. Abd asked, "Lady Karina, how many fingers am I holding up?" Karina thinks in her mind while her vision of his fingers is blurry, "There's no way he's holding up 6 fingers, and since I'm seeing doubles." She said, 3. Milian looks at his 2 dingers. She thinks in her mind, "Did I get it right?" Milian said, "You really are such a handful." He then lifts her up and holds her in his arms. While surprised, Karina said, "I'm fine." He said, "This isn't a good place for a patient to live in. I'll take you to the main building." Karina said, "But..." He said, "I know that you don't want to, but I'd be a horrible host if I just let you stay in the annex." Karina said, "Okay." Milian starts walking while holding her in his arms. He said to her, "I'll call someone to take care of you. Get some sleep." While feeling dizzy, Karina said, "No doctors." Milian asked, "What?" She said, "Don't call a doctor, no matter what, please." He said, "All right. Just go to sleep." She said, "Your Grace, you promise?" Milian brings her to the main building. She falls asleep on bed. While looking at Karina sleeping, Milian thinks just. He first stops his hand and then thinks in his mind, "What is she trying to hide from me?" 2 months ago. Maid said to Karina's father, "Goodness, your lordship! Lady Karina's nowhere to be found." He said, "Why are you making such a fuss? She frequently goes out on her own, doesn't she?" While bowing her head, Maid said, "I apologize, my lord." "Well, I don't think that's the case this time." While presenting a letter, Maid said, "I found this letter on her table when I was cleaning Lady Karina's room this morning." The letter's content were as follows. "I'm going to go on a journey. Karina Leopold." He said, "What in the world?" While reaching her hand to the letter, her mother asked, "What is it?" After reading it, she asked, "Where could she have gone without saying a word?" He father asked the maid, "When's the last time you saw her?" She said, "Well, I believe I saw her go outside 2 days ago." He asked, "What about yesterday?" She said, "Yesterday? I don't recall seeing her." He asked, "Did any of you see Karina yesterday?" Felden and Abilia looks oblivious. Abilia asked, "Since she wasn't in her room, I thought she went to the market again." Felden said, "I haven't seen her recently either." Enfric said, "Perhaps she was upset that the picnic overlapped with her birthday. I should have picked a different date." Enfric remembers his conversations with Karina in his mind. He said, "Karina, if you're upset, you can say so. Don't forget that mother and father love you. Karina said, I know. I'm their child, so they probably do love me, somewhere deep inside their heart. But one thing is for certain. I'm not their favorite. After putting the letter on the table, her mother wipes her mouth and said honestly, how could she be so inconsiderate? Didn't she realize we'd worry once we discovered she was gone? If she hated the picnic so much, she could have said so. Her father said to the butler she couldn't have gone too far. Dispatch a few of our men and find out where she went. Her mother asked the maid, did any money go missing? The maid replied, just 2 gold coins from today and yesterday combined, your ladyship. Her father said, see? She couldn't have made it too far with so little money. He said she'll probably be back after 2 weeks or so. I'll make sure to scold her properly when she returns. Her mother said, I hope nothing happens to her. Her father said, what an ungrateful child. This will serve as a good lesson for her when she finally realizes how blessed she was to live in comfort under this roof. After a few days, while standing beside the table, her father shouted, Karina Leopold. What in the world is she thinking? While crumpling the paper, he said, no matter how upset she was, how could she do this? His mother came and asked, darling, what's wrong? He said, it seems that Karina went south. She asked, so how is she? While putting his left hand on his face, he said they lost her when she got on a carriage headed for the capital. He thinks in his mind, I understand that Karina might feel upset, but how could she stir up trouble on purpose? What a disgrace to the family. While sitting, her mother said, who knows what may happen to her? We must send more people and bring her. Her father interrupts her mother and said, bring her back? For what? If she hates being here so much, let her be. She left of her own volition, so I refuse to let her into this manner unless she gets on her knees and begs for forgiveness. He called his butler Cassis. He said to him, I don't care how much it costs to keep tracking her down. Find her. Cassis replied while bowing she head, yes, my lord. Her mother said, I know that it was rash of Karina to do something like this, but I can only imagine how dismayed she must have been. Her father said, stop making excuses for her. She ran away because she was upset about a birthday party. He said, if word gets out about this, I won't be able to hold my head up. She's a smart girl. I'm sure she'll be back before that happens. Her father asked her mother, how's Leah? Isn't she lonely now that Karina's not here? Her mother, with a worry face, said, it seems as though she goes in and out of Karina's room, but she doesn't say much. Still, it must be hard for her. Her father said, she's more mature than her childish sister. Her mother said, though Abilia acts out sometimes, she's quite thoughtful. I'm sure Karina had her reasons for acting this way too. While imagining Karina in his mind, he said, what in the world could she possibly have been upset about? We gave her enough pocket money and always bought her the things she asked for. Her father said, we must have spoiled that girl. Her mother thinks in her mind that's true. We gave her everything a child could ever want. No, let's not talk about this anymore. She'll probably return in a month, at least. Karina opens her eyes and blinks. She was lying in bed. Milian asked, are you awake? He was sitting on a chait while reading a paper. Karina turns her head and looks at him and said, Your Grace? She gets shocked and talks in her head, it really is him. Milian said, you still have a fever? Stay in bed. While rising up from bed, Karina asked, Your Grace, what are you doing here? Milian replied, don't you remember? You refused to see a doctor, and it was too late to call for anyone. He steps up to her and said, so I decided to stay by your side until morning. While Milian is pushing her into the bed, Karina asked, really? He said, then why else would I be reading my papers in here instead of my study? She said, but am I not a bother to you? Milian talks in his mind, why would she be a bother? She's a patient, so of course I have to take care of her. He said, I am the owner of this manor, Lady Karina. Since I accepted your offer, it's all right for you to act like a guest. With a relieving face, Karina said, okay. Milian sits on a chair near the bed and asks, do you need anything? I've never looked after anyone before, so I'm quite new to this. Karina asked, really? This is your first time? He replied, that's right. She said, this is a first for me too. While smirking, he thinks in his mind, of course it is. There's no way a noble lady would ever need to tend to someone who's ill. She's babbling nonsense because of her fever. Karina said while smiling, but it is quite nice to have someone nearby when you're sick. She said, I'm used to looking after my siblings, so. Milian thinks in his mind, she must have been referring to being taken care of, not taking care of someone else. He talks in his mind, come to think of it, I believe I heard that Count Leopold's youngest daughter is quite sick. While imagining the Leopold family in his mind, he thinks things can be difficult for a family with a patient. For instance, it's inevitable for a parent's attention and affection to tilt in one direction. He said, anyway, it seems like your fever's not going down, which is a problem. Karina said, I have medicine in my bag. I forgot to bring it. Milian stands up and said, I'll go get it then. Karina grabs his hand and said, no. Not right now. Milian said, no? Your fever's still high. Karina said, it doesn't matter. Milian sits back on chair and said, you're more stubborn than a donkey. Karina giggles while lying down in bed. She thinks in her mind while holding Milian's hand, I feel cold and heavy. The room is really dark, but his hand is so warm. It feels so good that I can't help but giggle. Milian said to her, it's still dawn. You should get some more sleep. Karina asked, will you leave if I fall asleep? Milian squeezes her hand and said, no. I'm going to stay until Fong wakes up. I'll be right here until you fall asleep, so don't worry. Karina gets stunned after hearing him. She thinks in her mind, it feels like I just got an unexpected birthday present. She falls asleep after that. While sitting, Milian looks at her and thinks in his mind, should I send a letter to her family? No, I suppose it'd be better to do that once winter passes. He thinks she probably needs time to sort out whatever she's troubled with. He thinks it doesn't seem like she wants to depend on her family, so I don't think helping her out for 3 to 4 months will be a problem. After a while, Milian knocks on the door and asked, Lady Karina? While covering herself in warm clothing, Karina replied, Your Grace. He asked, should you be walking around when your fever has just gone down? Karina cheerfully replied, I wanted to stretch my legs a bit because I was in bed for so long. Karina talks in her mind, it has been a week since I collapsed. 2 things have changed since then. The first is that my health deteriorated so much that even walking at a normal pace makes me run out of breath now. Milian walks close to her and puts his hand on her forehead while she is thinking. The second is that the Duke comes by every day and puts his hand on my forehead to check my condition. Milian happily said, your fever's definitely gone down now. But, while Karina is blushing and covering her head with her hands, he said, why are you acting like a scared rabbit? While laughing, he said, don't worry. I won't bite. He asked, have you had lunch yet? Karina replied, no, not yet. She talks in her mind, I didn't want to be a bother, so I tried my best to stay out of his sight, but, while turning, Milian said, I haven't either. Would you like to join me? Karina nodded and he said, all right. Then take your time getting dressed. I'll see you outside. Karina talks in her mind. At first, he seemed like a cold and blunt person, but I soon discovered he was more caring and sensitive than I thought. While walking with Karina, Milian said, that reminds me. I'll be out hunting monsters quite often from now on, so there'll be no need for you to go back to the annex. Just use the main building. Karina asked, would I be a hindrance if I followed you on your hunts? He straightforwardly said, of course. Karina said, I was just joking. Milian asked, anyway, do you like to draw? He said, I noticed that your bag was filled with art tools. Karina said, oh, yes, I do. She thinks in her mind, not even my family has ever asked me about that. He said while pointing outside, then I suggest that you go up to the roof at dawn or sunset to see the view. It's quite the sight. She said, all right, I'll keep that in mind. While turning, he said, but Karina bumps into him. Milian said, oh, my apologies. While rubbing her face, Karina said, no, I'm the one that bumped into you. She asked, but what? What were you about to say? While scratching his head, he said, since you seem quite frail, be careful when you go up there. She said, all right. He said also, it gets very cold in the morning and night here in the north, so make sure to dress warmly. She said, okay. He said, you need to notify me or Fong before you go. She said, okay. While pointing upward, he said, and you must come down once every hour or so to warm your body up. While listening to him, Karina thinks in her mind, I bet his subordinates don't like him because he lectures so much. He said with a serious face, you better remember all this if you don't want to end up as a dry squid. She said, a dry squid? He asked her while turning, huh? Did you forget what you were like at the engagement ceremony? While remembering the engagement day, he said you were practically dragged around by your maids. It was clear from your expression that you didn't want to come. He said if you didn't want to be there that much, you should have said so. While getting sad, she said that was. She talks in her mind, I didn't have a choice. While remembering her parents in her mind, she tells my parents planned the engagement without even asking for my opinion. While remembering Abilia's sick, she tells and they couldn't attend the engagement ceremony because Liao was sick. While bowing her head, she said, I apologize if I had offended you. Milian said, no, there's no need for you to apologize. While closing his eyes, he said, I guess I was also at fault for not asking you how you felt about the engagement. I was too focused on carrying out my predecessor's final wishes. He said, anyway, what I'm trying to say is, if you don't like something, while looking her in her eyes, he said, just say that you don't. Karina thinks in her mind, but I've never been able to express my opinion so openly before. If I had refused to get engaged, Abilia would have been forced to take my place. She doesn't say anything. Milian scratches Hugh's head and then turns and starts walking. As he walked, he asked, what kind of foods do you not like? Karina replied, I'm not good with greasy foods. While opening the door, Milian said, I suppose that's understandable. Come, you must be hungry. While amazed, Karina said, Your Grace, Milian said, this place is beautiful when it snows, but the cold is unbearable. So, I gathered all the experts of the north and had them make a glass dome here. While excited, Karina asked, wow, when will it snow? Milian replied, since this year's been fairly chilly so far, I suspect it'll start snowing early next month, Karina told. It wasn't cold enough to snow back at Leopold County though, Milian said. What an absurd comparison. Of course, the north is colder. Anyway, the food's getting cold. You should eat. Karina imagines Milian saying to maids, don't put any greasy food on that side. She thinks, he's so considerate. Milian then asked, you're not that weak, right? You're not going to throw up blood while eating, are you? Feeling pressured, Karina replied, I'm not that ill. She thinks in her mind, I feel so sorry that he had to go out of his way for me. I thought he was just a cold and mean person. If any problems arise because of me, he'll have to deal with the consequences. Perhaps I shouldn't have come here. While she was busy in her thoughts, Milian looks towards her and asked, what's wrong? Does it not suit your taste? Karina said. Your Grace, he replied. You can just call me Milian. Or Lien is fine as well, she said. Oh, all right, he asked, so why did you suddenly call out to me? Surprised by his question, Karina shakes her head and then replied, I just felt apologetic. He asked, apologetic? For what? She replied. For not notifying you before coming here. I thought you'd say no if I asked beforehand, so, he replied. Of course I would've, he said, but it wouldn't be because I don't like you or find you annoying. It's simply because it'd be dangerous. Forget about what I said to you when you arrived. I'd like to officially apologize for how I acted that day, Karina replied. It's fine. And, she wondered, should I tell him about my illness? Even if I do, the situation won't change for the better. In the worst-case scenario, I may no longer be able to stay here, and, while smiling, she replied, thank you for this meal, Milian said. That's it. Enjoy. The main chef will be sad if you don't, and I'll have him prepare something easier for you to eat next time, she said. Huh? Yes, thank you. Milian asked. How is it? She replied while eating. It's delicious. After a few moments, while walking, Karina thinks, I haven't been this full in such a long time. Our conversation was lovely as well. Looking through the glass window, she thinks, maybe I should go up on the roof tomorrow. Milian shouted. What did I tell you? While furious, he said, did you think I was joking when I warned you about going up there? Karina replied. I'm sorry. Milian said, would you please explain to me why you went up to the roof wearing only a robe over your clothes? I thought you promised me you'd be careful. Averting her eyes, Karina asked. Did I? While Milian glares, she admitted, I think I did. Firstly, I must tell Milian or Fang if I plan on going up to the roof. Secondly, I must dress warmly. And lastly, I must come down every hour or so to warm my body. But, she looks into the hallway and thinks, there's no one here. Are they all asleep? While she dashes, she thinks, I don't think I should bother them. I'm just going to take a quick peek, so I suppose it'll be fine if I go alone. She went upstairs and opens the door to the balcony. She was in awe by the scenery and thinks, I've got to draw this. While she was drawing, just a bit more, someone grabs her from behind and she gets shocked. It was Milian who grabs her. She said, Your Grace? Back to the present, Milian shouted. If you want to turn to ice, just say so. I'll pour ice cubes into your bathtub myself, Karina replied. The thing is, I really had no idea that so much time had passed. I didn't do it on purpose. Looking at her, Milian furiously asked, Are you giggling? Karina gasped and Milian puts his hand on Karina's head and said, Why don't you just turn into a human furnace? It'll save me money on heating this place up, Karina asked. Your Grace, are you cold? If you are, you can take this blanket, he replied. I don't think you're in a position to ask me that, she thinks in her mind. It's been an hour since I've been under these blankets. Milian asked, May I take a look at your drawing? Handing her the drawing, Karina said, Of course. It's not that remarkable, but, Karina tells in her mind, Enfric became a part of the Imperial Order because of his swordsmanship skills. Felden can do anything he's seen once because he's a quick learner. Abilia is a gifted embroiderer who could make intricate patterns with ease. Compared to what they can do, my drawings are far from being refined. Milian looks at the drawing thoroughly and said, Whenever I hear you speak, I come to the conclusion that being too humble isn't good either. While confused, Karina asked, What? Looking at the drawing, Milian said, I'm not that knowledgeable in this area, so I can't give you an accurate evaluation, but this is incredible. Karina gets surprised by his remark and blushed. Huh? Milian continued, I never thought the view from the top of my manor could be this beautiful. Lady Karina, you should have more confidence, she replied. That's the first time I've received such a compliment, he said. Well, I'm dead serious. I can't wait to see the final version, she replied. Thank you for being so generous, but, he said. Generous? I meant what I said. I don't joke about things like this. If I really thought your drawing was horrible, I would have suggested that you find a different hobby. Karina laughs and said, I suppose you're right. Milian said, If you still have trouble believing me, why don't you give me the finished version once you're done? I'll request an evaluation, from an acquaintance of mine who's well versed in art, Karina replied. I will. But as for the evaluation, I don't think it'll be necessary. I don't draw to show to other people, you see. She thinks, I only started art because I was lonely and ended up continuing, but I'm too embarrassed to say so. She asked, Your Grace, can I take off these blankets now? While they were talking, someone knocks the door and said, Your Grace, it's Marius, Milian said. Come in. He came and asked, Your Grace, did you turn this lady into a blanket caterpillar? Milian said. I didn't summon you to hear such nonsense, Marius. It seems as though the long journey here has weakened her health. On top of that, she spent a whole day sitting outside on the roof. Give her a checkup, Dr. Marius said. Ah, I see, he said. Lady Karina, let me take. Yes, he reached out his hand to check on Karina. She hides her head inside the blanket. Surprised by her gesture, the doctor said, Huh? Your Grace? While surprised, Milian asked, Lady Karina, what are you doing? She mumbles from inside the blanket. I told you that I didn't want to see a doctor, Milian said. Well, then you shouldn't have fallen ill. Let him take a look at you, she replied. I'll get better once I get plenty of rest, Milian said. I see I'm not getting anywhere. He lifts her up as he was folding the blanket and said, Come, let's get you to bed. Shocked by his action, Marius shouted, Your Grace, how could you pick up a lady like that? If you're going to move her, you should carry her gently in your arms. Milian puts Karina on the bed and she was also shocked. Milian said, I did carry her gently. While crying, Marius said, How was that being gentle? She's not a sack of potatoes. Your Grace, you shouldn't treat a southerner like you would a northerner. They're not accustomed to our rough ways. Scratching his head, Milian said, Is that so? I apologize, Lady Karina, Marius then said. My lady, please forgive his grace. And would you be so kind as to give me your hand? He checks up on her, as she was breathing heavily. Milian said, How is? Marius cuts him off by pointing with his finger. Sure, he then said to Karina. If you're tired, get some sleep, my lady. Lie down comfortably. As she was lying down, Karina thinks, I shouldn't fall asleep. Marius then examines her with a serious expression. Milian asked, What's the matter? Why do you look so serious? He replied. She seems severely ill, he concludes. Her pulse is unstable and weak, as is her heartbeat. She also has a light spot on her skin. After examining her, Marius said, this illness is rare in the north, but it looks like she has art disease. Milian asked. Art disease? He told. Yes. As you know, the iOS Empire was blessed with art. The north is filled with soldiers because it was recently occupied, but the capital and the south have always been bustling with marvelous artists, Milian replied. I'm aware of that. So, Marius continued, though it's rare, there are some cases where a few artists are overly blessed with the gift of art. They are able to bring about miracles with their creations. Such miracles surpass human capabilities and are even called the power of a deity. Milian, remembering in his mind, said, come to think of it, Ferial's performances have the power to heal, Marius said. That's right. House Carlos is famous for being a family of artists for generations in the Empire. Then Milian asked, so you're saying that this squid, Lady Karina, is an artist that has the ability to bring about miracles? Marius told. Yes. This light spot that begins here under her armpit and continues to the inner part of her arm is one of the symptoms. Milina thinks in her mind, her drawing was enough to impress me, who doesn't know a thing about art. I even got goosebumps. The sketch depicted a familiar sight, and yet, it was far more beautiful than anything I'd seen before. Looking at it made me feel as if I was right there on the rooftop, staring at the view with my very eyes. Scratching his head, Marius replied, well, she's quite weak right now, but with my skills, I don't think I'll be able to figure out what type of art disease she has. Milian asked. Type? Marius told. There are several different types of art disease. The mildest type brings about a decrease in the person's stamina, while another causes the loss of sensation in limbs. And though it is rare, there are also cases where the disease takes away one's life, Milian said. So, what you're saying is, in the worst case, Lady Karina may die, Marius replied. Those cases are very rare, but to put it bluntly, yes, Milian said. That sounds like a rather cruel blessing, Marius said. Well, we are talking about a power that transcends human boundaries. Milian looks towards her and thinks, since she's sleeping right now, I can't ask her anything. He asked, is there a way to cure her illness? Marius replied, as far as I know, there isn't. All I can do is prescribe painkillers for her. Milian asked, so does that mean I can do nothing but watch as she loses a limb or her life? Marius replied, if the artist really wants to live, then they must stop creating art. However, most do not, Milian said. Why not? How hard could it be to choose life over art? Marius explained. Ha, Your Grace, if you were ever put in a situation where you would die or lose a limb if you continued wielding a sword, would you be able to swiftly decide never to touch it again? Milina then apologized. I'm sorry. That was thoughtless of me, Marius told. Those who have art disease are usually great masters of their field. It wouldn't be hard to imagine how much they love and treasure art, Milian recalled. She never mentioned this during the engagement ceremony, Marius added. They probably dedicated most of their lives to creating art, Milian then said. Thank you. I'll send a message to Ferial. As he was leaving, Marius said, since she's quite weak right now, please keep an eye on her. I'll leave some medicine that will reduce her fever. As he closes the door, Milian said. All right. After he left, Milian wondered, how long has she suffered on her own? At night, while smoking, Milian thinks she had a long face that time too. He recalled the day of his engagement and tells, on the day of the engagement ceremony, she looked at the spot where only her brothers sat, with such a sad expression on her face. But whenever someone came up to greet us, I was flabbergasted at how she would flash a smile at them like nothing happened. As he puts her drawing in a tube, he tells, I couldn't help but blurt out that she reminded me of a sheep back then. I thought she'd get mad at me, but she only smiled like a fool. Then standing in the balcony, he whistles and a falcon came and sits on his hand. The falcon rubs his head on Milian's face and then flies away. Looking at the falcon going, Milian thinks in his mind, I hope Ferial sends me a reply before it starts snowing. Meanwhile, Nocturne asked the doctor, Sir, are you serious? Are you really going to the north? The doctor replied as he was preparing to leave. I'll leave the clinic in your hands for a while. I'll be back next spring if things end quickly, Nocturne said. But the north is dangerous in the winter, sir, the doctor said. It'll be fine. I'll be cutting it close, but I'll probably get there before winter starts. While worried, Nocturne said, I'm pretty sure it will begin during your journey. But why are you going to the north anyway? Rummaging through his things, doctor replied. A month ago, a young lady with art disease came by to see me. She didn't have very long left to live. She told me that she was heading north. I got a little worried about her, so I decided to go there as well. The north probably has very few doctors who know about art disease, Nocturne asked. But if she doesn't have long to live, doesn't that mean she has the worst kind of art disease? As he puts on his hat, the doctor said. Well, it was my first time seeing such a type in my whole career as a doctor. I imagine it'll probably be too late to help her, but, Nocturne then asked, then why are you going there? As he was about to sit, he said. It seemed like she was from a wealthy family, but judging by how much her illness had progressed, it's clear that her parents didn't care about her very much. If they had paid a bit of attention to her, her condition wouldn't have worsened to this extent, Nocturne replied. Some parents abandon their own children, leaving them to die on the streets. So it wouldn't surprise me if such cold-hearted and neglectful parents existed either. Sitting inside the carriage, the doctor advised, anyhow, Nocturne, make sure to treat all your patients fairly. If I hear strange rumors about the clinic while I'm away, mind you, I'll be very angry. Nocturne smiles and said, all right. Don't worry. I'll run things as you would, sir. He asked, but what was the name of your patient? The doctor replied as he thinks. What was it again? Lena or something? I don't remember. Well, I'll be heading off now, Nocturne then said. Yes, sir. I hope you have a safe journey. As the carriage was leaving, Nocturne looks at it and thinks, Lena? Could it be House Leopold's? No, Lena is a common name. On top of that, he said that she didn't have long left to live. It couldn't be her, at Leopold household, Enric asked. Did we get any news about Karina? It's been a month since she left, his father replied. All I received was a report saying that they were still searching for her in the capital, Enric said. Father, I think it'd be better to make use of the soldiers. As he puts down his pen, his father said. If she has already gone beyond the capital, then it would be unreasonable to send soldiers. It could complicate things if the imperial family were to misunderstand. Showing disapproval, he said. Who did she get her stubbornness from? Enric said, I'm getting worried. I hope nothing has happened to her. His father looks at the portraits of his family members that were on his desk. He picks up Abilia's portrait and wonders, did I not have Karina's portrait made? After a few moments, while walking in the hallway, her father remembers these words. I'm surprised you even knew where my room was, father. Mother, I thought that both of you had forgotten since you never came here to see me these past few years. He stops and looks at the rooms and tells. We gave Abilia the room closest to the stairs so it would be easier for the doctor to find her. And since Enric has to go to work every day, we gave him the room next to hers. We gave Felden the next room because he's younger. And Karina's room. He looks towards where Karina's room was, and it was at the end in the dark. While walking towards her room, he recalls. What did she say back then? He remembers Karina saying in his mind, Father, I want a room over there as well. This one is too far from the stairs, so it's scary. He tells, I scolded her, telling her not to be so childish because she was a big sister. But now, I see that this room could have been frightening for a child her age to stay in. Standing at the door, he recalls. I remember going to Karina's room to reprimand her when she gave Lia street food. Other than that, I don't remember the last time I came here to see her. He went inside the room and looking at the table, he observes, this table is a bit too small for an adult. If she needed a bigger one, she should have said so. He pulls out the drawer and picks the drawings that were inside there. He looks at a painting and said, was it 2 years ago? Abilia's condition got worse, so we went on an outing to get some fresh air. Did Karina not go with us then? Yes, he was reminiscing. The door opens and his wife came and calls. Cassius? What are you doing in here? He replied, I was just dropping by. What about you? She said. Seeing Karina's empty seat in the dining room made me think of her, but I haven't been to Karina's room in a while, so this feels strange. Looking at the painting he's holding, she asked. What's that? He replied, I think it's one of Karina's drawings. His wife also looks at the painting and said, It's been some time since I saw her drawing. He asked, Did she draw before? She tells him. She used to bring her illustrations to show me from time to time when she was little. But she stopped after a while, so I thought she had gotten tired of it, she said. I wonder how she's doing, her father said. She's a bright girl, so she's probably doing fine. I'll send a few messages to nobles that are close to our family. Her mother wonders, she's always been such a good and obedient girl. Why did she do this? She told. Lia keeps asking me when Karina will be back, and Felden says he wants to go look for her. I'm getting worried day by day. Her father said, since Karina's not here, take good care of Lia. Her condition will get worse if she has any trouble sleeping. Her mother said, why don't you try sending a message to the Duke? Her father replied, Duke Pastellio? No, I doubt she went to Zentar. Shaking his head, he said, the road to the north is very dangerous. She couldn't have gone all the way there with what little money she took with her. She's timid and doesn't have the courage to do something like that. She's probably hiding somewhere in the capital. I'll take care of everything, so don't worry. I'll also make sure to ask friends who live near the capital. Her mother thinks, why do I feel frighteningly lonely when I look at this drawing? Meanwhile, Nocturne asked, why the long face, Lia? She replied, did it show? I was just thinking of Karina. It's been 2 months since she ran away. Nocturne remembers Karina Leopold. She was a quiet lady who never stood out. It was easy to overlook her because she had dull brown hair, unlike the rest of her family. But her blue eyes were strangely more beautiful than anyone else's, Abilia said. You know, Karina always stayed by my side whenever I was sick. That's why I never felt lonely, even though I didn't have any friends. While smiling, she told, she would read me a picture book whenever I asked her to, and even sang me a lullaby when I requested it. Hearing her, Nocturne replied, I see. Abilia continued, and if I told her that I was lonely, she didn't go out to meet her friends and stayed right next to me. While giggling, she told, actually, when I was younger, I was jealous that she got to go out when I couldn't, so I made her stay with me a couple of times. But I don't do that anymore. Nocturne smiles and said, Lady Karina must have been a kind sister. He concludes in his mind, though, she may not have liked you as much as you think she did. He then remembers a past incident. Abilia said, I knew you would catch me. Karina said, don't trust me. The words she mumbled at the staircase sounded so sincere that I thought her kindness to Abilia was all an act. And even if she doesn't like Abilia that much, she should have at least sent her sick sister a letter. Nocturne said, don't be too anxious. But if you're really worried, how about you get healthier so you can go and look for her? While rummaging through her things, Abilia said, that sounds good too. Oh, and I also found out something amazing about Karina the other day. Showing him a picture, she said, Tada, look at this. Nocturne asked, a drawing? Looking at the drawing, he thinks, it feels like I'm staring at this scene with my very eyes. It feels so real. Amazed by the drawing, he asked, did Lady Karina really draw this? In disagreement, she said, yes. I took it from her room. I have no idea why she didn't say anything about her drawings when she's this talented. If I were her, I would have run to Mother and asked her to compliment me. Karina's really good at doing things by herself. As she was talking, Nocturne stands up. Abilia asked, are you leaving already? He replied, yes. I just remembered that I had something to take care of, she said. Oh, all right. Goodbye. Nocturne left the room. After closing the door, he puts his hand inside his bag and thinks, could it be? He pulls out a prescription which contents were, name Karina, condition, suspected of having art disease, has 1 year left to live, at most, note, slim chance of living longer. He said to himself, no way. Back at the Duke's manor, Karina opens her eyes and she vavs lying on the bed. She rises up from bed and thinks, I'm thirsty. She extends her hand to reach the jug and wonders, did His Grace leave this for me? She said to herself, I shouldn't have come here. She thinks in her mind, I wonder if he found out about my illness. She said, I hope that he never finds out. When I was told that I didn't have much time left to live, the first thing that came to mind was how my family treated me throughout the years. If I told them I was dying, I thought they would give me more affection and attention. But I didn't want to face a reality where such love would only be given to me when I'm about to die. I felt miserable and disgusted at the thought of trying to seek their attention with my illness, which was eating away at my life like sand escaping through the crevice of my fingers. That's why I ran all the way to the north. My family can't reach me here, and Milian. I thought he'd ignore me because it seemed like he didn't like me. I tried to live as quietly as possible. She then remembers his words. I am the owner of this manor, Lady Karina. Since I accepted your offer, it's all right for you to act like a guest. While crying, she said, Why is he treating me so kindly? It's inevitable for people to have favorites within their family. That's why things are unfair sometimes, because everyone has their own set of priorities. But I'm merely a guest to Milian. I'm not even family. So how can he be so caring toward a stranger like me? While crying, she thinks, I'm going to die, and he'll keep on living. I should have made sure that he didn't develop any feelings for me, regardless of whether such feelings stem from sympathy or worry. If Milian ends up feeling guilty about my death, then she said to herself, I remember reading about a charm that can erase one's memory. She raises her hand as to draw and said, if I had that book with me now, I could probably draw that charm. My ability allows me to create any object I've seen, felt, and understood through my drawing. For example, if I draw the heart of a dead person, I could bring them back to life for a while. Of course, the power wears off as time passes, so a complete revival is impossible. But it's a powerful ability. If I had been born in a family that valued art, I imagine they would have supported my talent in every way they could. But what's the use in blaming my family now? Maybe I shouldn't stay here. Perhaps I should go to a monastery. I'm about to run out of pills, and I don't think I'll be able to go back to the south in my current condition. She then wonders, what should I do? A voice came. Do what? Milian came and said, You're up, Karina said. Your Grace. Yes, he walks close to her, he asked. What type is it? Huh? Milian drags the chair to sit and asked. You seem to be suffering from art disease. According to Marius, there are several kinds of art disease. I was asking what kind yours was. Karina averts her gaze and said, I'm sorry, he said. Don't apologize, just answer my question, she replied. I know that I'm selfish and acted out of line, he said. Lady Karina, I'm not trying to blame you, she said. I'm sorry I barged in here. It was thoughtless of me to do so. Milian takes a sigh and said, I see I'm getting nowhere. Karina asked, Is it too late to pretend that this never happened? With a serious face, Milian asked, What are you talking about? Karina doesn't speak. Then Milian said, Karina Leopold, she replied. Yes? He asked. Is it that difficult to answer my question? Clenching his fists, Karina said, Why, Your Grace, may I please move to the annex so that I won't be a bother to you? You won't even know that I'm there. But if I still end up getting in your way somehow, I'll leave. Then Milian asked, Will you get better if you move to the annex? Just tell me. Are your limbs going to be paralyzed? Or are you going to die? Are you really not going to cooperate? There aren't any doctors in the north that'll be able to treat you. It's also impossible to go outside because of the monsters. Karina shakes her head and said, I don't need a doctor. It's impossible to cure me, anyway. Milian told. Marius said that you'd be able to live if you stopped drawing, Karina replied. Then I will have nothing left. I've been an artist my entire life. If I stop drawing, I'll have nothing else to hold on to. Feeling puzzled, Milian said, Then explain to me why you came here. Was it really because you needed time to yourself? And don't say that you can't tell me this either. Out of consideration for you, I've been holding back for quite some time now, Karina replied. It might take a while for me to explain everything, though. Would you be all right with that, Your Grace? Milian replied with a smirk. Of course. I'm all ears. Karina thinks in her mind, I've never really opened up and told my story to anyone before. Where should I begin? 10 minutes later, while feeling annoyed, Milian said, Lady Karina? Karina said, Actually, I found out that I had art disease a week before coming here. She told, I wanted to organize my thoughts in a quiet place, and I didn't want to stay because I felt like I was being treated unfairly by my family. Milian asked, How so? She explains, Well, for example, I had to spend my birthday all by myself because it was on the same day as my brother's graduation ceremony. I was forced to lend my precious wallet that my mother had gifted me to my younger brother, and I had to watch as my younger siblings were complimented on their smallest achievements, while mine were ignored no matter how hard I tried. She told, I was afraid that I would have to endure being treated like that until I died, so I left. Then she asked, I'm quite childish, don't you think? Milian said with a straight face. Why? Did your lonely birthday party interfere with your brother's graduation celebration in any way? Karina replied. No, he asked again. Did you sprawl on the ground and throw a fit until you got your wallet back? Or did you hit your little brother? She replied. And no, he again asked. Then have you ever harassed your siblings just because you were jealous that they got more compliments than you did? Surprised by his words, she said. What are you talking about? Being childish is being afraid of getting in trouble for spilling water on your father's papers and running away from home for a week. I'm going on a journey, he asked. What's so childish about what you did? You gave in to all of your siblings' needs, Karina admitted. Yes, but yielding to the needs of one's family is a given, he interrupts her by saying. It's a given? Says who? Well, she gets shocked and realized, since when did I start thinking that I should always put my siblings before myself? Milian then said. Lady Karina. He scratches his head and again said. Karina Leopold. While tears fell from her face she replied. Yes. Milian then walks to her and sits beside her on bed. He puts her head on his shoulder and said, Don't hold back and just let it out. Karina raises her head and looks at Milian and said, Your Grace? Milian thinks in his mind, Isn't this how you're supposed to console someone when they're crying? He said, It's okay to cry. You'll feel better if you do. You can finish your story after you're all done. Karina nods and then she puts her head against Milian's chest and starts sniffling as Milian pats her. As she sniffles, Milian thinks in his mind, she's going to be even more stressed if she cries so quietly. After a few moments, Karina puts her head beside Milian's shoulder and thinks, I don't remember the last time I cried in front of someone. Milian asked, Are you all done? Karina gasped and said, Why, Your Grace? She looks at his shirt, which was wet because of her crying. She said, Oh no, your shirt is all wet. I'm so sorry. Milian smiles and said, Then you should thank me for giving you a shoulder to cry on. Go on. Karina looks at him and said, Thank you? Milian said, Don't apologize or say that you're fine so easily. If you keep putting yourself down in front of other people, they'll start taking you for granted. From that moment onward, they'll come to value you less, making you feel more timid and unsure of yourself. But a thank you makes everyone feel good regardless of when it's said. Karina thinks, I've never thought of it like that before. I always said I'm sorry or I'm fine, just to avoid a conflict. But as time passed, people started taking me for granted, and the very words I uttered began suffocating me. Karina then smiles brightly and said, Thank you, Milian. If it's all right with you, please call me Karina from now on. Lena would be fine as well. Milian blushed and said, All right then. Why don't you get some rest now, Karina? As Milian was leaving the room, the butler Fang came holding a letter and said, Your Grace, a reply from Duke Carlos has arrived. Milian looks towards him and said, That was quick. HM? Why are you making that face, Fang? He replied, It's nothing. I only thought that it was very like you to say such things. Milian asked, What do you mean? Hand me the letter. He opens the letter and starts reading. Blah blah blah, nothing important. The content of the letter were, You want me to use my miraculous powers to take a look at someone? You insolent fool. Why don't you learn some manners and ask more politely? Ferio Carlos, while enraged, Milian said, It looks like Ferio may come much later than I expected. He crumples the letter and said, Well, I guess I'll deal with this later. He then asked Fand, By the way, where do young noble ladies usually go for fun? A training hall, he replied. I'll look into it, Your Grace. Meanwhile, the doctor was riding the cart that was going towards north. The cart driver said, You were very, very lucky, Doctor. In early winter, you're rarely given permission to pass through the northern checkpoint because of preparations to subjugate monsters. At this rate, we'll probably arrive at Pastellio Manor before it starts snowing, the doctor replied. I see. I'm glad I came at the right time. Thank you for helping me, the driver said. I should be the one thanking you. You saved my sick daughter. But may I ask why you're sewing a map on that cloth? He replied. This? I'm looking for someone. Back at the Pastellio Manor, Karina tells, I recently picked up a new hobby. Every day, I watch Milian train at dawn and draw him. Unlike me, he's a person who radiates light all on his own. I can't count how many times I was captivated by his movements as he glowed under the soft moonlight. I felt compelled to sketch whenever I observed him. And when I came to my senses, I found that it was already morning. She glances and thinks as she draws, I must remember to write what I want to do. As she was holding a notebook to write, she takes a sigh. She thinks in her mind, I really don't know what I want to do. What should I write down? She said to herself. Should I ask Milian to recommend some famous sightseeing spots in the north? She heard. Sightseeing spots? There's nothing but monsters around here. She was surprised by it. 8. Looking at him as he was leaning on the door, she said, Milian, you should knock before you, he replied. For your information, I knocked more than 5 times. He walks to her. He leans on the table where her drawing was and said, What were you so focused on? She replied. Well. She then suddenly realized she quickly gasped and said, wait. That's not. Holding her drawing, Milian asked. What's this? Karina tries to grab the drawing from his hand. Milian swiftly turns towards the other side and said, I was wondering why you got up so late nowadays. It was because you were busy drawing this at dawn. Huh? Feeling embarrassed, she said. I just thought that the sight of you swinging your sword under the hazy twilight sky was magnificent. Milian blushes and then he puts down the drawing and asked. Really? Karina replied. Yes. Besides, if I capture a scene in a sketch like this, I'll be able to remember it even after time passes. She then asked, Anyway, what brings you here? He replied. I was going to go out on a patrol soon, and I was wondering if you'd like to accompany me. I figured you'd be tired of having to stay indoors all day, she excitedly replied. That sounds wonderful. After some time, after getting prepared to leave, Karina said, Milian. Milian looks towards Karina as she was dressed in fancy clothes. Karina was looking lovely in that dress. Milian also blushed. He clears his throat and told, We're going to take the carriage, then walk to our final destination. Will that be all right with you? Karina replied. Yes, it's fine. Milian then holds her hand and said, Then shall we? The maids bowed their head and said, Please have a safe journey, Your Grace. Sitting in the carriage, Milian thinks, Looking at her like this makes me realize that she really is a noble lady. He asked, Did you learn your etiquette from your parents? She replied, No, I learned it from a viscountess, while the rest of my siblings learned from my parents. He asked, And why was that? She answered, My sister was quite sick then, so I guess they didn't have the time to give me lessons. He concludes, I'd better not probe any further. He then asked, What's that in your bag? She told, It's a notebook that I was going to use to write down the things I want to do, but I'm having some trouble getting started. Milian said, Your goals don't have to be grand. Don't think too much. Just write down whatever comes to your mind. Who says you can only write down what's possible? This may be nosy of me, but I think you often overthink things. Take what you just said, for example. You have every right to be angry or upset about having been taught etiquette differently from your siblings. After the carriage stopped, Milian extends his hand towards Milian and said, Karina, the world is big. Don't let the memories of an unfortunate past discourage you. Asterisk. As Karina grabs Milian's hand, he said, It seems as though Count and Countess Leopold kept a great tree in a small pot for too long. The tree had no choice but to keep growing its roots out in that tiny pot. So even if that tree finally decided to jump out of that suffocating pot, that wouldn't be your fault. After that, as she gets off the carriage, she smiles. Milian asked, Why are you laughing? While smiling, she replied, Well, I just pictured a tree with legs, Milian said. I was being serious, she whispered. Thank you, Milian, he asked. What did you say? She replied. Nothing. The bazaar was bustling with people. One of the vendors calls, Come in and take a look around. Karina looks at the decorated houses and bazaar. A festival? She asked Milian. Is there enough to eat in the north during winter? He replied. Yes. You can eat all the meat you want in this season. He takes a peek towards Karina as she mumbles and thinks she's horrible at hiding her thoughts. Karina mumbles, All the meat you want. Is it to stack up on protein to fight monsters? She asked. What kind of meat do you eat? He replied. The meat of demonic monsters. Surprised by his answer, she asked. Excuse me? Milian explains. The north closes its gates in preparation for fighting monsters, so where else would we get our food from? We kill monsters that come down to the village in search of food, and we feast on their meat. But meat isn't the only thing that's useful about these beasts. Their fur and bones are used to make clothes and ornaments. Karina gets in awe imagining all the things. Karina was looking at a fur. Milian asked, Is it that fascinating? She replied. Yes, it looks so real. It's like it's really alive. He asked, Is there anything you'd like to have? As he was saying, a passerby went past Karina and Milian pulls her towards himself. The passerby said, Sorry there. Passing through. Milian was holding her close to him. Both of their hearts raced. Karina said, And Milian. As she spoke, they heard a bell ringing. Ding dong, ding dong. Karina asked, Milian? He replied, It seems like a monster has appeared nearby. I'll be right back. After a few moments, one of the soldiers called, Have reinforcements arrived? A soldier looks towards Milian and said while saluting, Your Grace. Milian asked, What's the situation? The soldier replied, The advance party is out fighting the creatures. The advance party was fighting the monsters. Afk. Everyone, hold your defenses. Don't let them advance any further. After that, Milian said, Wait here, Lady Karina. He jumps from the second floor to the ground and said, I'll leave her in your hands. Shocked by his action, Karina shouted, Milian! The soldier beside Karina said. Yes, Your Grace, he said. My lady, if you'd come this way, Karina asked. But he just jumped off from here, the soldier explained. He'll be fine. He won't get hurt from something like this. Look. They looks towards Milian and the soldiers that were fighting the monsters. He explains as Milian was fighting, those monsters are called herdis. They've been sighted often these days. They're so strong that it's extremely difficult to even scratch their skin. I can't imagine fighting one alone. In order to kill a herda, we need to find its weakness. But it hasn't been easy, so even His Grace has no choice but to settle with chasing them away. Looking at him fighting, Karina thinks in her mind, I wish I could help Milian in any way I can. Suddenly she gets an idea and she pulls out her sketchbook and starts drawing something. She thinks maybe this will, after the fight was over. The soldiers were saying to each other, it's over. The soldier besides Karina said, My lady, please. As he was talking, he looks towards Karina, but she wasn't there. Surprised by his disappearance, he calls, And my lady? Karina was going to where Milian was. After reaching there, Milian was asking the soldiers, Were there any casualties? A soldier reports, Some sustained light injuries, but thankfully, no one was severely wounded. Milian looks towards Karina as she was breathing from running to down there and said, Karina, I would have gone to get you if you just stayed up there. Karina wipes the blood stains from his face and he gets a little surprised. After that, Milian grabs her hand and said, I'm fine now. That's. He stops in the middle after realizing, Karina, why is your hand so cold? Didn't anyone give you a blanket to keep yourself warm? The soldiers that were with Karina trembles after hearing that. Karina replied, I'm fine. It wasn't that chilly. Milian rummaged through his robe and pulls out a pendant. While wrapping it around her neck, he said, Here, it's a gift. The soldiers present there were shocked and said, No way. Hearing that, Milian said to them, All of you who shouted just now, run 100 laps around the training grounds. Karina asked. Is this a rock? Milina replied. No, it isn't. Karina gets the sensation. It's warm. Milian explains. This is something called a heron. It's a rare item that comes out of a slain monster. Karina asked. Why are you giving this to me? He said. Where should I start? It's a northern tradition. We believe that if a sick person carries a heron, it will help them get better. He smiles and said, I hope you recover soon. Karina chuckles and said, Thank you for the lovely gift. Milian then said, Should we head back now? We can enjoy the rest of the festival tomorrow, she replied. All right. As they were walking, Karina looks behind and it was the doctor. He said, You look more lively than when I last saw you. It's been quite a while, miss. Karina calls. Dr. Winston? She asked. How did you find me? He replied. Oh, there's a way. Anyway, may I ask who this is? Milian introduced himself. I'm Duke Milian Pastellio, the doctor replied. Greetings, Your Grace. I'm Winston. The doctor thinks in his mind, I thought his name sounded familiar. So she's a lady of House Leopold, the one said to have gotten engaged to Duke Pastellio. Milian suggests, Why don't we continue our conversation back at the manor? Let's get on the carriage first. At the Leopold household, Ferio went to the Leopold manor. Count Leopold greets him saying, Thank you for coming such a long way, Duke Carlos. He replied, Not at all. Thank you for letting me in despite the short notice. Head of House Carlos, Duke Ferio Carlos, he said. Are all the pictures I asked for ready? The Count said replied. Yes, come right this way. But may I ask why you're interested in them? Duke Ferio said. Well. He remembers a scene from before. As he was eating, the window broke and something snatches was he was about to eat from his spoon. He said, What in the world? A hawk? The hawk came holding the letter that Milian sent. Ferio said, It's all right. It's for me. Will you give me the message it's holding? The maid said. Here you are, Your Grace. Ferio said, I haven't heard from Milian in a while. I wonder why he suddenly contacted me. The letter was, This is a drawing by Lady Karina of the Leopold family. I believe she has art disease. However, she won't tell me what kind of art disease she is suffering from. Why don't you put your powers to good use and look into it? And make sure to find a cure as well. P.S. Tell Count Cassius Leopold that his daughter is with me. Milian Pastellio. He wondered, art disease? This is back at the present, the Count said. To be honest, I was surprised when you asked me to show you my daughter's drawings, he asked the servant. Did you bring all of them? The servant replied. Yes, Your Grace. He flips through the drawings and puts them down on the table. He said, Your Grace is a master of arts, so I'm not sure whether you'll find these meager sketches to be pleasing. Ferial takes a sip and said, I think that you should study art more, Count Leopold. Even a passing layman would laugh at your words. A little shocked by his remark, the Count asked, What do you mean? While shaking, he said, I don't know why you suddenly came here demanding to see Karina's drawings, but I must say that I'm quite offended by what you just said. Ferial thinks in his mind, goodness, he took the words right out of my mouth. I'm offended that he would store such wonderful artwork like that. He tells, I've supported numerous artists for years, so I know for a fact that those with art disease rarely get along well with their family. It was common to see them hide their condition. In Lady Karina's case, it seems like her relationship with her family was so bad that she hid the fact that she did art. Ferial sarcastically said, It sounds like you're not even aware that your daughter is suffering from art disease. Shocked by this reveal, he Count said, That can't be. She doesn't even have that sort of talent. You must be mistaken. And if she was really sick, then how could she have run away? Ferial asked. She ran away? The Count replied. Yes, unfortunately. And we haven't been able to track her down, Ferial said. Aha! I guess going to one's fiancé is considered running away from home here. The very person who sent me here was Duke Pastellio, the Count asked while in shock. Karina's in the north? Duke Ferial said. You don't even know where she is, and yet you claim that she's in good health. It seems like either you or my friend has lied to me. Then the Count said, How dare you make such rude speculations? He stands up and said, If you're done looking at the drawings, please leave. Duke Ferial smiles and said, I guess I will. I don't have anything more to find out here, anyway. He stands up and said, Please excuse me. The Count said, I'd like to thank you for telling me my daughter's whereabouts. I'll make sure to pay you back in some way later. The Duke said, Now that's fascinating. The Count asked, Fascinating? Your Grace, do you find this situation amusing? The Duke replied, Count Leopold, you did not believe me when I said your daughter has art disease. And yet you believed me when I said she's in the north, the Count said. What are you? Duke Ferial said as he was about to leave. It's interesting how you only hear the things that you want to hear. If someone told me that my child was suffering from an illness, the first thing I'd ask is if the child was all right and how ill they were. Well, goodbye then. He closed the door, and standing outside the door he thinks, the subjects of the sketches are missing, and a good amount of the drawings are mostly empty. He speculates, this seems like the miracle of creation. He said to himself, it looks like I may be too late. After Duke Ferial left, the Count was organizing his thoughts sitting there. Suddenly someone knocks on the door. He said, Come in. Enfric and Nocturne came. Enfric said, Father, I came back because work ended early today. Nocturne here says that he has something to report to you, so we came in together. The Count looks towards them and said, I see. How's Abilia? Nocturne replied, She's not very energetic, but she's doing quite well. I think it'd be alright for her to attend tea parties or banquets as long as she doesn't overdo it. Her father said, What a relief. Please look after her. I imagine she must be quite lonely. He asked, What about Dahlia? Nocturne replied, Her ladyship wore herself out because she hasn't been sleeping well these past few days. She'll recover once she gets plenty of rest and takes her medicine, his father said. I see. Then Nocturne bowed his head and said, Then I'll take my leave now. At the door before leaving, Nocturne looks back and thinks, should I tell him about Lady Karina's art disease? But if Lia finds out about this, I'd better not. Dr. Winston's already gone to the north, so I'm sure he'll return with an answer. After Nocturne left, his father said, Just moments ago, Duke Carlos paid a visit. Did you run into him on your way here? While remembering, Enfric said, I thought I saw an unfamiliar carriage. What brought him all the way here? His father said. He said that Karina is at Pastellio Manor. Getting shocked after hearing that, Enfric asked, What? Then we must go right this instant too, the Count said. Lower your voice. He takes pill while drinking water. He said the gates of the northern checkpoint must be closed by now, so it'd be impossible to get across. He puts down the glass and curiously asked, Enfric, when you attended Karina's engagement ceremony in my place, what was your impression of his grace? Enric told. Duke Pastellio was just as the rumors described him. He was courteous and had an impeccable character. And it seemed like he took good care of Karina throughout the ceremony. Though I'm not absolutely certain, it seemed like Karina liked him as well. His father thinks in his mind. Is this why Karina went to Duke Pastellio? Because she was touched by his kindness? Honestly. He takes a sigh and said, they're not even married yet. How improper. And she didn't even send a single letter to her own parents. What an unfilial daughter. Enric suggested. Why don't you have a conversation with her after she returns? There could have been a misunderstanding between us, his father replied. But we must meet her first if we want to do that. Just where did everything go wrong? Back at Center, sitting inside the carriage, Karina asked. How did you find me? The doctor replied. I got help from the power of a miracle. Surprised by his words, Karina asked. Huh? A miracle? Showing the piece of cloth, doctor said. Believe it or not, I have a gift for embroidery, Karina said. Goodness, Milian asked. What does that have anything to do with it? Doctor puts the cloth back in his bag and said, well, I can find whatever I want. For example, he demonstrates, let's say I want to find my glasses. I first picture the item in my mind. Then, when I burn my needlework, which has been embroidered with any kind of pattern, I can find out where those glasses are. When I was a sprightly young man, I used this talent to help my town's guards catch criminals. Both Milian and Karina claps. Then Milian asked, I noticed that you used the past tense. Then are you? The doctor takes a glance towards Karina and said, yes, that's right. I'm suffering from art disease as well. And unfortunately, I'm slowly losing my sight. If a deity truly exists, I thought that they are quite cruel. After all, what sort of god would take away an embroiderer's sight? Then Karina asked, then are you unable to see right now? The doctor laughs and said, ha, no. To be exact, I almost lost my sight. I can still see to some extent. I got here perfectly fine, didn't I? Milian asked. Then has your art disease been cured? The doctor shakes his head in defeat and said, to be honest, there's no cure for it. Milian asked. There's no cure? But you can still see, the doctor told. That's because I gave up on embroidery. It was the fastest and simplest solution. Milian asked. Is that the only way? The doctor explains. Yes. To begin with, art disease isn't something that everyone suffers from. Only 1% of artists who can perform miracles have it. Losing one's senses, such as sight, isn't a rare symptom of art disease. The rarest is losing one's life in exchange for a miracle. Karina gets stunned hearing that. He added, of course, such cases only happen once every 50 or 60 years, Milian said. In that case, I guess it's extremely rare, the doctor then said. If you don't have any more questions, may I ask you a few things, Lady Karina? Karina flinches and then said, yes. Would it be all right to discuss it in my room? The doctor replied. I'm fine with that as well. Milian looks at her surprised by her reaction. Her face, after the carriage stopped, Karina stands up and said, Milian, I had a wonderful time today. After getting off the carriage, she looks back and said while smiling, if it's all right with you, please invite me out next time as well.